additional ideas for how exchanges can be hip. SET is certainly now with the Sustainability Index, the CSR Institute, and 4 companies on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. Continuing to press for more open, transparent disclosures makes it more friendly to global investors. When you can't see the information, large investors tend to avoid it. The more you can see what's happening, then that helps to create positive pressure. Indexes for investment help unleash the market demand, so that is coming. So that is coming later this year from SET. And then focused trading platforms like a separate stock exchange for social enterprise, also coming this year. So SET is already following how to be more hip. So hopefully we can get even more transparent disclosure, so I can show you a long list of all those Thai companies. All right, so we'll end on this. Your mission, we talked about 100-year brands. But how do you create impact for 1 billion people? As a company, as an investment fund. So which organizations today affect 1 billion people, 1 billion out of the 7 billion on Earth? This is our last interactive part. Any business have 1 billion customers or 1 billion users? Which one? Coca-Cola? Which one? Google, yes. So Google, who else? Facebook has more than 1 billion people. Coca-Cola. Any other organizations affect 1 billion people? Religion. GE may affect that many. Procter & Gamble do. If you speak Hindu or Mandarin, that's 1 billion people. Or Spanish. So if you think about your goal, your growth goal as what is the scalable way to affect 1 billion people, that can give you some focus strategically. What is a common human need? Because we're certainly not at the point where we're all self-actualizing for everybody in the world. And how can we create 1 million jobs to support those 1 billion people? And it doesn't have to mean that you are the employer. So a company like eBay, which provided online auction, they created 2 million jobs of people who were sellers on eBay. 1 million of those people, it was their primary income, and 1 million of those people, it was their second household income. And then can we create not just a $1 trillion marketplace, but how do we get up to the 200 trillion in capital markets that have both impact and profit? So at least in Bhutan, they consider their measure of success gross national happiness, not gross domestic product. These are the 72 factors of gross national happiness. Hard to make a scorecard, but it's got a different intent. One of these actually is keep a diary of your last 24 hours. And so people actually rate themselves on satisfaction on a scale of 8, 9, or 10, and that can vary by country. And from a human development point of view, at UNDP, the UNDP rates health and education and other human factors. So Thailand actually is in the middle here. So this is the world. This is every country plotted. And so Thailand here, increasing in human development over time, up to a 68. So this could be another framework for what are your strategic goals to solve human needs, where you can even compare them by country. And you can go to undp.org and make your own, too. All right, so one of the last points here. We're currently burning more than 1 Earth's use of resources. And the more development we have, unless that's sustainable development, the planet is not going to be able to support everybody. And if you look at the Human Development Index, that there's a minimum quality of life, and Thailand is above the minimum of 60. The countries who are above this human development are burning more resources than we can afford. Then there's some countries who are burning more resources and not have a good quality of life, like Saudi Arabia or many people in South Africa. And then there's African countries here where they don't have a quality of life, but they're not using any resources. So the business opportunity is to solve how do you maintain a high quality of life with natural resources that will support everybody on Earth. Otherwise, we're going to start having competition, and that's going to be not fun for everybody. So, unfortunately, I'm here to tell you, this is my country, burning too many resources. There is one country right here that has a high quality of life with a low balance. One country in the whole world. Anybody know the answer? One country has a high quality of life, above average quality of life, and low natural resource usage. Yeah. It is not Singapore. I think Singapore is. It is not Scandinavian, but it's a good guess, good region to guess. It is in Latin America, specifically the Caribbean. Jamaica's a good guess. Costa Rica is a very good guess, but it is Cuba. So for a room full of people who understand capitalism, there is a socialism model that there may be an answer in. And again, as stretching our thinking of what are they doing there that at least for quality of life people are semi-satisfied with around natural resources. So it's not the answer, it's just a mind stretcher. So that's it. Hopefully we've showed you how human impact and profit connect together, how they can make your portfolio stronger, how you can lower risk and increase return potential, how you can help your own company find high growth markets for sustainability, operate in a way where your children and grandchildren will have access to the same or better resources, and really unleash the power of invisible assets like people. So I want to thank everybody for your attention and interactivity. I think we'll have a short Q&A, but just want to say, kap kum kap. So we're open to any questions or any group discussion. No questions? Perfect understanding? All right, everybody take out a piece of paper. We'll have a quiz. Do you think, I'll ask a question of you. Do you think for what you learned this morning, is there something you will do differently or think differently? Or is this old news and now I need to make a new presentation?
Sorry?
Yes? Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know how you're going to read the graph that you say the human development vs nature, the last
Yes,
one.
yes.
Okay. Which side is minimum and maximum?
Yeah, so this is Human Development Index rank. So these are higher human development according to UNDP. So high health, high education. And then this is what is the, how many equivalent Earths, if everybody used resources at that lifestyle, how many equivalent natural resources of Earth would be burned? Is there additional question too? All right, so I'd like to have a challenge. I would love to see one or more people put human capital on the balance sheet. There are only about 6 companies in India and 1 or 2 in other countries. So if Thailand came up with 10 companies that did human capital on the balance sheet, it would be the #1 country in the world.
I have a question.
Yes.
Paul, have you done the HIP index for Asia? I saw you have only U.S., right?
Right.
Mainly U.S.
Yeah, so we have modeled Singapore and Hong Kong. We've also modeled sort of an Asia index. And so when we did the Singapore one, it worked very well. When we did Hong Kong, so there was higher performance and lower risk. When we did the Hong Kong model, we actually needed to split it into 2 categories of companies. The Hong Kong listed companies who were based in Hong Kong, it worked very well. The Hong Kong listed companies who were based in mainland China, it did not work well. And so there were a couple of insights from that. One is the information was low from Hong Kong listed companies in mainland China. 2 is what is the order of getting paid by a mainland China company? The shareholder actually is not #1. So government officials is higher, local non-international investors is higher. So in that case, we actually had to split the index. But if what you're saying is there's demand and capital to do that, we'd be happy to build a specific one. Sure. Other questions? Ideas? Invitations for people to join you in your innovation?
Well, and how to promote the HIP concept among retail investors who are more likely to concentrate on short-term returns?
Right, so for retail investors, one is first to introduce it and educate, because they may not be aware. So whether through a one-page document or a conversation or a presentation, that's one way. 2 is asking the customer, what is their goal? Like even if they say, I want to make money, say, what is their life goal? Take care of their family. Maybe they came to Bangkok from countryside, maybe to help the people in the countryside. So it's really an interview process by the advisor to retail investors to hear what the true life goal is. That is not just making money. Making money is you need to do to pay for your expenses in retirement. But how you feel about that and what joy you can take from not just being rich, but being fulfilled is part of the retail investor conversation. So how we do it is essentially, so we've written the HIP book, we give presentations like this. The people who attend those presentations are interested in sustainability or impact. Their friends usually are interested too, so there's some referrals that come with that. Right now, we're focused on institutions to help train their advisors on how to serve the demand. And there may be an opportunity for some indexes in the US to apply HIP to some new strategies. So it is demand driven. What's happening certainly among high net worth families is as the millennials start to get trained to take over, if they have this preference, that is starting to ripple into the financial advisors and wealth managers. Sure. Okay. Other questions? Yes, please.
Can the new concept be applied in disabled people
To disabled people? Yeah. Yeah, so there are, before we showed across all asset classes, so there are some private venture capital, private equity funds, and there's some nonprofit funds that have foundation assets. So depending on what your goal, do you have a particular goal in mind of the disabled, like what you're trying to accomplish?
Since I heard that they have set up a network for this disabled person in Thailand, so they want to stand to take their role to make them equality work opportunity.
Right, right.
So maybe they be the tool to make that potential to work.
Right, right. Yeah, possible. You'd want to think about what is the, either is there a diversified portfolio where you want those ventures to support that process? And so look at public companies who have products for disabled people, or public companies that hire, that build up them as a employee workforce. That's one possibility. There could be a fund that loans money to help disabled people get educated or improve quality of life. So that depending on what the goal is and what the available investment opportunities are, if there aren't a lot of investment opportunities and you think that there's other people who would fund it, then that's where you get the, other investors together, co-investors. And so when investors come together saying they want to invest in something, intelligent financial people usually figure out a way how. Other questions or conversations? Yes, please.
Is it possible that your HIP score is biased by size? Because only big company would get higher score on HIP.
Yeah, so there is right now, there is a bias where the score is higher by large versus medium versus small. And part of that is the process of producing information is more intensive for smaller cap companies than larger cap companies. So there is currently a bias for that. The other aspect, which we've learned over time, is large companies actually have economy of scale. And when you study economics, it's hard to find evidence of this, but when you take a company that has multiple business units like SCG, and the management system of SCG rolls sustainability through all the business units, that can be a more effective implementation strategy of sustainability than 3 companies, each 1/3 the size of SCG, because you have to change 3 cultures instead of 1 culture. So there is for large companies that decide to be sustainable, they can actually move at larger scale to improve more, versus getting multiple smaller companies on board. Once the competitive element kicks in and people see that you're losing contracts by not being sustainable, or you're not in growth markets, then they'll migrate to it. So we're still in some cases, in some of those stages where people are just trying to understand if sustainability is a cost or a value. Did that answer your question? Yeah, great. Yes, Bina.
Yeah, I have a question. Is this strategy, the HIP strategy or the indices, is it a self-fulfilling tool in a way? Because the way you structure it, you look at the young crowd, let's say they like the quality of life, they would prefer to invest in particular type of companies, and the way that you pick those companies out of the pool of all the other funds, essentially you're moving capital to those company and make them sustainable in the longer term, and effectively you're cutting down the flow of capital to the ones that are not not on the hit score. So it's kind of self-fulfilling in a way. Because I mean, those guys like Pepsi, let's say one day people say, I don't want more, I need less sugar in my life.
Right.
So you basically say, well, don't invest in Coke or whatever. And those guys will need to retrain themselves or re-strategize themselves so they can be, or somehow get higher hit score.
Yep.
And it's kind of self-fulfilling cycle in the way it's structured.
It can be, but the performance today is not because of the amount of capital we're moving. So I wish I could say we were much bigger where that was actually happening. But what's built into what you're saying is, in looking at the future, are you predicting the likely trends that will benefit the financial performance? And the answer is yes. And if you invest in that way of saying what the likely trends are, then if you're doing your research well, it will be self-fulfilling. It's not yet the case, though hopefully it will be the case in 5, 10, 20 years. So much capital is moving based on these future-looking factors that it's more of what you're describing. But that's not, I mean, when we showed you the chart of less than 1 in 4 or 1 in 10 managers doing this, that's not enough to move markets. It's enough to move some smaller markets, but it's not enough to move capital markets. But yeah, it's very thoughtful. Anything else? Okay, I'm treating this as perfect understanding. Each of you are highly qualified to give this presentation.
I've got one
Yes.
more question. In giving HIP score to each firm, do you only use publicly available information, or you use some like non-public information, such as interviewing employees, and what kind of some of the judgment that you need to use in giving the score?
Sure. Yeah, so there's no, so nearly all the information is public. We do interview managers. In the US, there's a law called Fair Disclosure Law. So there's nothing that they can tell us that we couldn't find, that theoretically we couldn't find out. So there's no insider information that we should be getting. The interviews are mainly to double check the data that the company is publishing or has released in some way. And the company is self-rating their management practices. So before we showed you the management practices, there's 5 questions. We interview the company about that. So that's some potential information that fits your definition of non-public information. But at least in the US, when we interview companies, none of that is yet considered secret. So in general, how we describe it is all of what we do is knowable, but it's ignored. It's not acted upon. So we do the hard work for everybody of collecting it, quality checking it, and then publicizing it.
Do you publish the detailed methodology of how you actually give out the score to each firm?
The methodology is described in the HIP book. The weights that we use are trade secrets. So, yeah. So it's like Coca-Cola. Great. Last call.
Any questions so far? Okay, if not, I would like to thank you, Mr. Paul Herman, the CEO and founder of HIP Investor, very much. It's really grateful and fantastic lecture for today. I hope we can apply your lecture into the business, and I hope it make the company to be more hip very soon. Thank you very much. Please give him a big applause. And thank you very much for today for your kind attention and active participation. And we're going to have the 5th SD Forum in this year around September. And I hope to see you guys once again in this year. Thank you very much and good luck home. ขอบคุณค่ะ